I am fired up, bro. I am so honored to be in the presence of greatness. Yeah, two amazing creatives over here. Yeah, we have the one, the only Olivia Ambani.
Hello, I'm back.
Welcome back, like you never left.
Yes.
How you doing, Olivia?
Very well. Yourself?
I'm good. I'm
Yeah?
good, to be honest. You know,
That's
maybe nilikuwa nafikiria sitakuwa na energy leo.
We'll
For some
bring the
weird
energy.
reason. Yes, indeed. Yeah, but I mean, let me tell you honestly, I like my Fridays.
That's
I
great.
look forward to Friday.
That's wonderful.
Yeah.
So the energy came. With
Yeah,
the
for Friday. Not like I'm going to do anything crazy out there.
It's just knowing it's Friday. It's just the mindset.
I just know tomorrow I'm not waking up for work.
Ooh,
I'm just going to be
2
relaxing.
days of relaxing.
I'm at that age where doing nothing is
It's a
such a
gift.
thing. It's a
Yes,
gift.
It's a
man.
thrill.
You know, Lakini, it's good to see you again.
Thank you.
And then, of course, on my right-hand side, the one, the only, KHALIYESA. KHALIYESA. West side, the best side.
Yes.
Okay, good stuff. Barbara Minishi.
Yes.
Welcome.
Thank you.
KHALIYESA is Kenyan, isn't it?
KHALIYESA is very Kenyan. In fact, I was showing Olivia a letter that over the weekend my father showed me because I'm named after my grandmother whose name was KHALIYESA.
Oh, nice.
I tend to say KHALIYESA means the rainmaker. And for me, rainmaker is everything creative.
Yeah.
So technically, we're all KHALIYESAs in here.
So you don't mind the rain, the way it's been falling
I love
crazy?
rain. I love
you
rain.
do?
There was a time actually it would rain and I would be like standing outside. And
What?
Because I was just like, I want to grow tall. I want to get connected to the earth.
Yeah.
This week, remember that time it rained heavily?
Yeah. Was it in 24?
No. It wasn't. Was it Monday, Tuesday?
Oh, you're talking recently?
Yes.
I know it
Even
rains
this
so
week.
heavy, yeah.
The traffic was so bad. Then I remember I got to a place and I was just like, all right, I'm going to take a walk. And I just got out and I was walking in the rain. And I had an umbrella. But it was just one of those things where you're just like...
Yeah. You're not scared of getting sick when you're in the rain? Because I remember, me when I was growing up, my mom used to tell me, Kevin, ukishika malaria, it's on you. Don't you dare call me telling me until you have a fever. Your parents never used to tell you those things when you were younger?
You know, I was actually even born in April, so I remember all my birthdays, there used to be thunderstorms. So, like, naturally, it's just one of those things. I don't remember my parents ever telling me not to.
Yeah.
I'm very privileged to have been born into a family where my parents were the kind of... They didn't need to be super strict about things, but we knew the rules. So it was one of those ones where it was just like, yeah.
Yeah, I know what you mean, yeah. Sometimes they would just have to give you the look.
So, I would
parents have
say,
it.
in terms of inheritances, mommy. My mom and my dad both, but my mom has the best one because people, I tell people, I say we weren't beaten when we were growing up. I don't remember being beaten. My mom has this thing. She can just look and she just goes very silently.
Yeah.
KHALIYESA.
And you know.
You just know she's serious.
And you know. That's why sometimes when people just go in there, and I get it. Sometimes you need the hype. But for me, I always say, I can hear you very clearly. And especially when you're upset, I'm just like, oh, I get that.
Well, that's amazing.
Yeah. Yeah.
It's good to know, for real. Welcome back. Sorry. You've never been here.
He's welcoming me back in
so you'll
advance.
be
So
back.
Because I met you earlier.
I'm definitely going to be back.
I like that.
Next time when film comes out, I'll be back again.
But I like your energy. You're so bubbly and so chill. Is this how you've always been?
Oh. So, it's very interesting. I remember one time in school, I said, I'm an introvert, and everybody went, no!
Yeah.
Here's the thing. I think it's called being an ambivert. So I am a balance of being an extrovert in that I'm very curious about people. I've always had this thing about just listening to people.
Yeah.
And I'm very comfortable, like meeting you on the street, and if there's something going on, I'll just ask you a question.
Yeah.
And that's it. And that seems outgoing.
Yeah.
But I also have my very quiet, sacred moments because I need to take time to myself to listen. I always say you have 2 ears and 1 mouth. So that means the double the time you take back into yourself.
So is your time structured in a way, say for example now, every early morning you have to be in some place quiet, like, be meditative or whatever,
Absolutely.
Okay.
And
okay.
it was not something that was actually conscious.
Okay.
It's just, I remember in high school, I used to walk along the corridors when everybody had gone to the other side because I was in boarding school. So I just walked up and down and just by myself,
Mm-hmm.
and it would be like quiet, because some people get uncomfortable with silences, but I
Yeah.
love silences.
Yeah.
Yeah, for me, there's a lot of language you can hear in silences.
Yeah.
And even in terms of creativity,
Yeah.
I always say, listen, sit back and be silent. And it just
It's
works
true.
that way.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Tell me about your background. Where did you grow up? Where were you raised? School?
Nairobi.
Nairobi.
That's why, a lot of Christmases, people will be like, so you're going to Shago? I'm just like, yeah, but I'm in Shago. But technically, yes, grew up in Nairobi. Went to school. I first started currency for my first 4 years, and then I went to Makini. Then for high school, I was in Pangani, and then I went to Daystar University.
Yeah. Daystar. Good stuff. And so you've always wanted to be an artist or creative? Let me put it like that. Yeah. Is this something that you knew you always going to be?
I have a story I remember. When I was 8 years old for Christmas, I really wanted a pair of red patent Mary Jane shoes. And I got them for Christmas.
Yeah.
And then I went to bed wearing them, because I wanted to be like Dorothy from The Wizard of Oz. So I wanted a tornado to come through Nairobi and take me away to Oz. But I think I noticed at that time that I used to love story. I love stories, would get immersed in stories. In fact, true story, I will tell on them at this point. When I was in Standard 8, my mom got called to school because the teachers were concerned.
What was their concern?
I was borrowing too many storybooks.
So you were an avid reader.
Yes. So I was an avid reader, and I had this thing of world building because it just comes naturally to me.
Yeah.
If you say something, I can put two and two together, and I start laughing. Somebody will say, you know how people throw lines?
Yeah.
I just say, yes. Tom Kian. Literally, I see it in my face, and then I start laughing. They're like, what are you doing? And I'm just like, yeah. So I would say I have this thing about looking and listening at the world, and I see stories everywhere, and I just love it.
Yeah.
So inherently, I believe we're all artists.
Yeah.
Yeah. You call this show The Culture Kitchen.
Yeah. This segment specifically.
Yes.
Yeah.
And we're cooking.
We're cooking. Danger. I
In
like
our
that.
conversations,
It's
in our
true.
relating, because that's what happens. It's just synergy that's all there.
Yeah, but you see, most people actually think storytelling is such a skill. Like, there's a way to go about it.
Yeah.
The intro, the body, the outro.
Yes.
You know what I mean? Yeah. Yeah. So, and that's why they think, for storytelling in itself,
Yes.
it's a gift that only a few folks can actually thrive in. Sharing the stories. You just feel like it's so easy for certain people, like yourself. Yeah. So if you say that most humans are generally storytellers.
Yes.
Some folks are like, I'd rather consume stories.
Than create stories or tell stories or listen to stories. I don't know. This is not why, because I remember also growing up and back in the day, when TV used to come on at 4 p.m.,
Yeah.
And then radio, I remember Saturday listening to stories because we had that storytelling oral culture. And again, I say this thing about listening. You just sit in a space and you just listen and you see so much and you hear it. And I think that just naturally comes out, and you don't have to be always super expressive and be like, I have a story to tell. But there's just a way I always say, even that's the thing actually that I learned about photography, because before, people say, oh, it's the No. I just love the intimacy of people talking, because that's how it starts.
So what inspires you to do what you do then?
Intimacy with people.
Okay, yeah.
Because the camera was the first tool. Honestly, I didn't know I was going to be a photographer.
Yeah.
What happened, my dad has this story, and he's written it in his books and everything, and he's saying, when I was a baby, I used to love playing with his camera and his tripod. Yeah, and so, because later on we're just like, because none of us saw that coming. I also didn't see that coming.
Yeah.
Then when I went to school, I remember I was in Pangani at one time. There was a visiting day, and my mother came with a camera, and I took a picture, because at that time it was film, 35 analog. And then I remember going home later on, and then the portrait was printed. And to date, it's still in the house as the favorite portrait of my mother. But I remember I was sitting in the boot of the car. It was a different angle, and I took the picture.
Yeah.
And then when I got accepted into Daystar, my father decided to give me the Minolta camera when I was going into school. And let me tell you something about cameras and power. I learned inherently, you hold a camera, people don't bother you.
Oh, interesting.
Yes. So when you come in as a fresher and, everybody, yes, we need to get you and doing the activities.
Yeah.
And I have the camera, oh, you don't need to do anything. And I was just like, oh.
You get a free
So
pass,
I can do this. And then I
Yeah.
realized it was also a doorway.
Yeah.
Yeah. I could ask people, say, I'm interested in what you're doing, day in the life stories. So, Kev, I did, again, as I'm saying, I love listening to people and being curious about them.
Yeah.
And at that time, I remember I used to also like scene magazines, like life magazines, day in the life stories. And I was just
Yeah, they were dope.
So I remember doing a tailor, I remember doing one of those food sellers. In fact, the guy is still living in Harlingen up to now, like 20 years later. Yeah. Social worker. It's just creating stories for myself because it just gave me something. But I think for the first time ever, and this is now why we're talking about storytelling, you're saying voice. For me, it wasn't voice that actually gave me storytelling. It was a camera that opened me up and made me realize, oh my gosh, I actually have a voice. But the voice was not speaking, it was listening to people. Yeah.
I've seen the work that you do, and also I've read your profile, your bio, that kind of thing.
Yes.
Very, very spiritual, very emotional, very deep. You know what I mean? It's not surface level art.
Yeah.
The stories are very deep. Yeah. So at what point did it not just be about you taking pictures, but going deeper with it? Because it's definitely very
love
different.
how you're seeing
Yeah.
very deep. And there's this thing sometimes, we have things that are all around us and we never know about it. I'm just going to go back to photography. When I graduated from Daystar, because I did a degree in communication, I was not planning on being a photographer. I was going to probably work in print media or advertising or NGO. I was probably going to do a master's and PhD in communication because I was excellent at my schoolwork. Yeah. But suddenly I had a dream. Actually, I just woke up and it was just like 1 week after graduation.
Yeah.
And I felt it in my body. And it was just like, this is a thing. And then when I looked around my room, I realized my entire walls were covered with images.
Yeah.
What had I been doing that was so easy and that I loved? Photography. So sometimes, even when you talk about spirituality, there's some things that are always around us that we don't know about, but then suddenly we get this and then it lands in. But it took a while for me to put it into two that this was a thing. For me, it was just life. This was how I was showing up. And I feel sometimes as people, we have these masks where we show up and then we separate our identities. It is difficult for me to do that.
Was it after that dream that you decided to come up with the 13th plan? Is it the 13th path?
I was 23 then.
Okay.
So then I just woke up. I said, okay, I want to do photography. But this is the kind of photography I want to do. Because even when I told people later on I want to be a photographer, they were like, so you want to work in a Kodak studio? You want to work in the newspaper? I'm just like, no, not that kind of photography. And then when I mentioned that kind, at that time, Kenya, there were specific people, different color. It was one of those things where it's just like, you, as a Kenyan black woman, you think that's possible. But I actually followed it up, and it worked. And slowly by slowly, when I think about my journey, and even in how my first shoot happened, I wrote a letter to Salima Min at Camera Pics. And I was just like, those were the days of snail mail and phone calls, you call. And I said, I'm interested in doing a different kind of photography. And it was that time, it was advertising, commercial, and fashion. Then I said, I know, because they had Camera Pics and they had the Mohammed Amin library. And I was just like, I'd like to do that. And then he responded because of better writing skills. And he was just like, I came in for an interview. He said, we don't really do that. But at the studio, there's Duncan Willett, who does it. You can have a talk with him. And he gave me his number. Then I remember that time, the offices, Salim's offices were in ABC Place. So I went back to my parents' place, then I called him on the phone and I introduced myself and I said, my name is Barbara Minishi. I'm interested in being an intern. And Duncan was like, oh, interns don't know what to do with them. I said, I can come in half an hour.
Right.
And he was surprised because someone calls you and tells you I can come in half an hour. And then I went.
Yeah.
What I went with was during school, when I was in school, I was fascinated by contemporary dance. Yeah, and that's the time the Go Down Art Center had started.
Mm-hmm.
And my neighbor, she worked, Joanne Yambo, she worked at AYNR at that time. So I just said, can you please just drop me on Mombasa Road, near South Beach?
Yeah.
And then I'd walk into the Go Down, and I started doing documentary pictures on contemporary dance. Again, as I said, creating stories for yourself.
Correct.
Because you love doing that. And those are the pictures that I showed Duncan, and he had things. And just like we are having this conversation, I have this natural thing where, because of listening and synergy, I can move through different spaces.
Mm-hmm.
And it was just like, okay, come in. And later on, then after I left, sent a thank you letter.
Yeah.
And he was like, I'm not around, but come in for the first shoot. And that's how I showed up for the first shoot.
Yeah.
But at that time, it was still, it was not a full-time thing. It was one of those ones where I've graduated, I'm seeing the other people in my class, they're getting the jobs, everybody's looking at you, hey, you're doing kibarua.
Really?
They're not understanding what you're doing, because they're
Yeah.
just like, you're wasting this excellent degree that you have
Right,
and everything.
right.
And sometimes you get those doubts.
Yeah.
But there was something about me, and I'm still going to attribute it to lineage. You know this thing where you have this stubbornness?
Yeah.
It's like, the apple doesn't fall far from the tree. So
Exactly.
you get it on another level
Yeah.
where you're like, and I'm also thankful to my parents, because my parents had this thing where growing up, actually, it was one of the things I used to do. I never asked for permission. I just told them I'm doing this. So again, as I'm saying, it's not that it was a rebellion on another level, but it was a rebellion in that I'm curious about this and I'm going to follow it. I'm going to tell you and I'm going to do it, but they wouldn't stop me. They'd be just like, okay.
Right.
They don't, so I appreciate that. And I actually give like double thanks for that. So slowly I started. Then I remember one time I did a shoot and I helped a lady. Her name was, no, I've jumped too far. One of the stories I did was, at that time, Kenya Fashion Week used to happen, on Macreath and Kenya Fashion Week. And I remember I came in and I said, I want to do behind the scenes.
Right.
So I did documentary story on behind the scenes. And I met one of the designers. Then later on, I met her on a shoot and she was like, hey, can you come in KOIM? There's a new magazine called True Love that's coming into Kenya. And I am assisting, I'll be the stylist for the magazine, and I'm assisting, you can come and help me. And I came on the shoot, and what happened was I ended up assisting her and the photographer. 2 days later, the photographer, whose name was David Beatty, called me to be his assistant on shoots. And that's how now part-time I also started learning fashion. Then after a while, because at that time, Saturday, SatMag, Nation Magazine, used to utilize both David and Duncan. Again, as I'm saying, at that time, it was a very, very niche industry.
Mm-hmm.
But I was doing my own stuff, meeting people, like it was in town. If I see you and I'm just like, oh, you look good, I'd be like, can I shoot you? And I'd shoot, and at that time, there was a darkroom at Studio Mona Harlingam, I'd print. I'm still developing my stuff and part-time working with these people. Then I remember one time both David and Duncan were not there, and SatMag fashion had to be done. And Carol was just like, Barbara, can you do it? And I did it, and that was my first ever published fashion shoot.
Yeah, so I can tell things were aligning for you.
Yeah.
Very
then
early.
Then after that time, Adam, Drum, True Love, all of East Africa magazines came in. And honestly, that period of it's, you know how I wouldn't want to call it a training ground, but it was perfect because I had the freedom to be, because I was doing cover, I was doing fashion, I was doing portraiture, I was doing travel, I was doing products, but everything was just energizing, and it was just.
And what was the feedback from people who were consuming your work?
So it was interesting. It was good. Sometimes people would think somebody else had done the image because they were like, it was too good. 2 or 3 times I was told, your pictures don't look Kenyan.
What does that even mean?
Thank you.
Yeah.
Then after a while, I started saying thank you.
Yeah.
And I realized, and this is now why when you talk about spirituality, or we talk about, oh, you're natural like this, if you have something in you and you're willing to let it come out, and there's a way you see the world and you do things, and to people, it's just like, oh, we've never seen this before.
Yeah.
But for me, it was not about being defensive. It was just about, again, as I say, I have this thing where I can listen. I don't need to take it on, but I can continue doing what I'm doing. But at the same time, I saw that it was also inspiring to some people. So I just said, I'm going to continue.
Yeah.
But I must say, I remember one time I had an image and somebody grabbed the laptop because they were convinced it was Photoshop.
Oh, interesting.
So,
Yeah.
and I laughed because I've never learned Photoshop. I love. They're great. They're great Photoshop artists, and I get it. And I say also in terms of post-production and photography, they do go hand in hand. But I remember that time, so this is sometimes I can get stubborn to another level. I was just like, I don't need to learn Photoshop. The way I shoot my pictures is not reliant on that. Again, as I say, I started in film, and I get it. Being in a dark room is actually technically post-production. But for me, I was just like, I don't need to argue about who I am and what I know, because the beauty about photography, it's both dangerous, is that every shoot you're beginning to be. You know how you come in and you're just like, you're thinking, oh, I know. No. Photography and filmmaking humbles you.
Yeah, I can imagine. And so I want to go back to the story for the 13th path. I find it so fascinating because you say that in 2016, you went through a radical personal and professional change that evolved into a post-documentary, fine art, and multimedia project. So how was this transition?
The transition,
you know what I mean? And because you said you had a dream.
I had a dream.
So what was the epiphany? And
the epiphany was that, remember how I'm talking about I'm doing all this work. I'm getting all these accolades. Yeah. I remember even in 2013, I had gone into art direction, Nairobi Half-Life, African Magic Movie Awards. You win an award, like Best Art Director. And you're getting all this thing, but your life feels hollow. And again, as I'm saying, I listen. I remember I had been traveling, I came back, I had a shoot. And I remember after the shoot, I'm in the cab and I'm crying. Because I was just like, I can't do this anymore. And I just said, things have to change. And I remember having this dream.
So I want to jump in there. Sorry to to cut you short. So you were crying because you felt
I couldn't do it. There's a way you can move along. There's signs that you know. I cannot do this. I cannot do this. I'm being called somewhere, somehow, and I need to listen. And your life depends on it. So again, as I say, when you've developed a sensitivity to listening, you must tell the truth to yourself. And sometimes that's the hardest for people, because sometimes you think, oh, I have bills to pay, I have to do this. Literally, it was overdrive. Whoever he was, he took it. So I said yes, and I opened up, because also when you say yes to it, you see things in your life just start shifting automatically. So I got this dream, and it was such a vivid dream. And I named the photo series He Looked Like Solomon Lane because Mission Impossible had just come out, and I had watched the movie, I remember, on the plane that time when I'd been traveling back to Kenya. And Solomon Lane was the antagonist in the movie. So in the movie, I dreamt it was my childhood home. And I walk in, and all the brilliant, incredible women I know were being hung on hooks. Yeah, and it's like their essence. They were all shriveled up and they were taken. And then Solomon just turns and looks at me, and I was just like, then I ran out of the house. Then I got to the door, and I just thought, absolutely not. And then I walked back because I was just like, I'm going to fight you. And I woke up. But it was one of those things because there were other elements that were so powerful and strong. And I remember waking up and calling my mom, and, oh, thank you for mothers like that. I called my mom, I said, we have to go to the house. Then we went back to the house, I took pictures. Then after that, again, as I'm saying, once you start a ball rolling, things will happen. And then I knew the house I had built, I had a wonderful home and everything. I just said, I'm going to get rid of everything and start again. And that's how, and I thought, oh, you're going to start back again. And that's how the 13th path started. 13 actually is a name that people tend to think it's unlucky. We don't even have a route number 13. I don't think we have. Right. Some buildings don't have the route number 13. In spirituality, in tarot, 13 is the death card. But when you're talking about death, we're talking about metamorphosis and transformation, being willing to go into the unknown. And that for me was that point, because when you've built something that feels hollow and life is inviting you, hey, you've said yes, do you want to change? So I started doing that. So I let go of my house and everything. Again, people ask, how did you? People were thinking I have a nervous breakdown or I'm running away. I was just like, no, that's not me. I just said, life is calling me to do something, and I'm listening, and I'm willing to strip myself from inside out and take responsibility for what comes through. Because I realized the way I had built my career was excellent. But also in the building of it, I also had armor. And sometimes when you have armor, that armor is blocking in a greater story that desires to come through.
Wow.
And when a greater story or path, because I got very clear. When people say, oh, you're very creative, and I'm just like, look, life is working through me.
Yeah.
I'm a vessel, I'm a channel, and I'm a container. I get it that I do have my free will. So I choose to co-create,
You know,
with
it's interesting you
everything
put it
around
like that, because I know there's some artists out there who they get to like a dead end creatively. This guy
Yes.
just feels like, oh my God, burnout.
Yeah.
I can't think straight.
Yeah.
I need to get into another space or career altogether. There's a sense of anxiety. Let me put it like that.
Yes.
So you, before you had the dream,
Yeah.
I'm assuming, just like you said, you're going to an energy like that.
Yes.
And so now, what are some of the things that you had to unlearn?
Strong black woman syndrome.
And how does that look like?
Strong black woman is everybody, relying on doing everything by yourself. Because technically, if I think about it, a lot of the stuff I had built was by myself. Oh, no, you're not going to... Oh, I'll do it by myself. And the thing also about photography is sometimes at that stage, you can be a great solo practice.
Yeah.
But then when you move into film, you're working with more people. Yeah? Then again, as I'm saying, the armor. As a photographer, people open up so much. Yeah? Because you're providing the safe space. Now, when life points back and it also tells you open up and be vulnerable.
Yeah.
And you're there just being like, no, I gotta be the strong one.
Yeah.
It doesn't work. It really, really doesn't work. And again, as I'm saying, I'm looking around, and because also when I'm talking about lineage, it's not just about family.
Yeah.
All of us, everything has a lineage.
Yeah.
Social, cultural, political.
Yeah.
Yeah, we're told, oh, as a woman, you can't do this. Or as this, you can't do this. And sometimes now when you've grown up in a scenario that has been, it's all been about being in the defense, when you're
Yeah.
supposed to open up, it's just like, you got to let some things go.
Yeah.
You have to let your idea of what success looks like. You have to let go of the idea of what showing up in your power looks like.
Yeah.
I had done a very actually powerful documentary story, and had been followed by Al Jazeera, and it had been featured. I had been doing a project just called the Red Dress Project in 2012, 2013. And I remember even when I first came out with the dress, and that was the day Jubilee came out, and the project was red.
You're like,
And
what?
at that time, that was the first time actually Honorable
Yeah.
Martha Karua was running for president.
Oh, interesting.
And she had agreed to be in the project.
Oh.
And then it comes out, and I was just like, okay, how's this going to work out?
Yeah.
But
First of all, that outfit was very creative.
no,
Very
you've
dope.
not seen the older one.
Oh, there's an older one. Okay.
So this is now I'm telling you the
Yeah.
13th path and how life brings
Yeah,
you
yeah,
back.
yeah.
Yeah. And we did that, and it was such a powerful experience. And I remember the next day it was shown on Al Jazeera, then apparently even in Kenya Airways in the flights. I used to get random calls and emails from people.
Yeah.
But what had happened was 3 months after it had been done, I had to stop it. And for me then, it was the biggest failure of my life. It was still at that same time, how I said, I have to stop doing these things because it's not working. Because one, again, you can't do things alone. A project like that, if you want it to be traveling, you have to have people on board.
Of course.
Kevin, I had never learned how to ask for help,
Yeah.
ever. And life was just like, where we're taking you, you need to learn some things.
Exactly.
And everything I was just like, and I said, I have to let it go and I have to surrender.
Yeah.
Me, who's usually the fighter, it was just like, and I stopped that.
Yeah.
Yeah, so that was also one of the key signs where it was just like, this is not working, we have to do this. Then also my health sometimes, like literally my body will start breaking down when things don't work. And at that time I used to smile. Like automatically my lip would go, I tell people, I'm just like, if I'm incongruent with a truth, an inner truth, and then I'm trying to tell a lie to myself, it just is,
I want you to talk to us about the short film, Inheritance.
Yes.
Beautiful. You added so much value to our society. What inspired you to actually make that film? Because I know it's about giving a voice to...
It's about,
Yeah.
again, this
the
came in
voiceless.
a container.
Yeah.
It came in a container because it was part of the Some Fine Day program. So they were doing, it was called Making something. But it was a program where, similar to what had happened with Nairobi Half-Life, where you're trained, and then after the training, you come together, create a team, and make your own film. So I remember I knew I wanted to be a director. Or I already knew I was a director. I already knew I was a director. You don't have to get legit, even with photography. I never went through any formal education. Let's also get that straight, because sometimes some people think you have to have formal schooling. And I knew something wanted to come through me, so I saw the call out and they were doing the program, and I applied as a director and I got in. So in the program, I thought I didn't read the application properly. I didn't know that at the end of it, there would be 3 projects chosen and that they would each get grant money to get their film made. And the thing was, we were directors in a room, we were separated. There were writers, there were producers, and the writers would have a chance where they would pitch the story. And if you like it, you'd be like, this is the story that I want, and I want to do it. Kevin, when Ngwatila was talking about inheritance, and she's talking about the rural, and for me, the rural is where all those stories are. And she's talking about this young girl who's estranged from her home. And part of me was seeing also myself in that story. There's this thing when your body knows, it knows.
Yeah.
And I remember the pictures were still going on, but it came down, and because we were we were at home because it was virtual.
Yeah.
I just sent Guatila a message. I said, that's my story. Yeah. And I had connected to another lady, Ivy, previously before, and I'd seen her. You know how you see someone, you're just like, we're going to work together and you're my producer. Then I also sent Ivy. I said, this is a film that I want to do.
You said you felt inspired the moment you heard that girl talking about it.
It's not even about inspiration.
Yeah.
It's just like something just...
It relates.
It was just like, you know, you're just like, this is me.
That's the one.
You're like, you're just like, you know how you even want to go through the screen? You're just like,
yeah.
You're like, ah.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Why do you think most girls, especially in rural Kenya, are so voiceless? Yeah, like you say, they're estranged. And would that ever change? Yeah?
Okay, I'm going to switch it because technically our protagonist, Kava, she's actually a city girl, but she was a straight, you know, if you're coming for the opening, you're going to watch the movie. But I know some people have watched it because...
Yeah.
Anyway, here's the point. Historically, it's not even just about the rural areas. Historically, all women.
Yeah.
There's this thing, you know how sometimes when they say good girls keep quiet, it starts first with children, then with girls. So this is now why even that silence, it's ingrained in us like socio-culturally. But a lot of, again, as we're going to see, strong, deep cultures, Africa, Asia, it's a thing where girls, they're just like, shh, you know? You grew up with that. So when you have a semblance of having a voice, it's just like, no.
Yeah.
So in the movie, the protagonist, what had happened was her mother had been estranged from the family because she gave birth to her out of wedlock. So, but then she gets to go back, and it's just like, why do I have to come back to a family that has already rejected me? Yeah. And when I think also about my career trajectory, the fact that I gave myself permission to create my own path.
Yeah.
Create my own voice. Listening to that own voice and articulating in the way that for me felt true. Because again, as I said, I was honoring what I was listening to and what I was seeing. I got very clear. Growing up, some people will never listen to you.
Right.
And I learned very quickly, I don't need to fight that. I know what I'm here to do, and it's not about proving them wrong, but I can show up for that. So that's why stories, or when I'm listening to people, this is now why I truly, truly value listening to people. Do you know how many people are not listened to, Karen?
Yeah, it must be sad.
And I always say how just listening to a person can change a life.
Yeah.
Yeah. So
But I also get the feeling that your parents made it easy for you to find your voice. Like you told me, they never really questioned your decisions.
Yeah.
They kind of trusted you from when you were very, very young.
They
So
did.
I guess also how we were raised, how some of our, our sisters, our moms were raised, kind of made it hard for them. Even if they were creative, even if they were, they had core confidence, but just somehow because of the environment they were in. Yeah. And that sticks in you, you know what I mean? Now you grow up thinking, I'm not supposed to say stuff, even if now you're not even around your parents.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So again, thank you very much. I am grateful so much for my parents.
Yeah.
Yeah. It's not to say we didn't have arguments. I always love it because even when I think about my father, we were like two We're
Yeah.
both the fair people.
Yeah.
And I remember one time we had an argument.
Yeah.
And then my father said, daughters are not supposed to argue with their fathers. And I looked at him and I said, Daddy, if I can't argue with you, if I
Yeah.
go out into the world, what will happen?
Exactly.
And like he was just like, yeah. So, but I also got it very clearly. It's not that this thing about silence, and I get it, because sometimes silence is powerful. Sometimes there's some things
Correct.
I'm just like, this deserves silence, and silence is sacred here,
Yeah.
and I'll hold that. But the silencing of the desires that we have within us, the visions that we have that want to come through, this is why I list, again, as we're saying, how we grew up, the spaces that we inhabit in. Some people in some countries, it's dangerous. As an
Yeah.
artist, it is dangerous. And this is now why I love doing my workshops. And I'm just going to say, like, legit, I enjoy doing my workshops, like, especially in Uganda.
Yeah. Yeah.
But when I think about Uganda and Kenya, two very different places.
Well, interesting. Why do you say that? You know, I actually went to school in Uganda.
Yeah.
Bit of high school over
Yeah.
there.
I love
Yeah.
my career. I was there for one of my workshops. I said legacies. I said, let's go to the Makerere archives.
Exactly. So, what are some of the notable differences that you learned from, you know, the I don't want to say culture, but
Yeah.
as a people in Uganda in this modern day and age, how different are they from Kenyans?
First of all, I'm just going to say, as East Africans, we have our merits, and we are all wonderful people. Yeah, we are. However, some people say Kenyans are like the New Yorkers.
Yeah,
Yeah.
abrasive.
Because, and I remember one time somebody was just like, we can get articulate, and we can get loud and rowdy,
Yeah,
and we can state our opinions,
Yeah.
and especially to people in authority.
right.
Some countries, even just in a, not even in a formal setting, even in an informal setting, if you make
Yeah.
a statement, it's a life and death situation.
Right.
And they've inherited that and they've grown up with that. So that's why I'm saying Kenya at least has some liberties regarding that. It's not to say we're better than that than here.
Yeah.
But I saw how it affects being an artist.
Yeah.
Being that you have something within you, but it's you think you have to ask the world permission to do it, not understanding that yourself, you have to give yourself permission first to do that.
Yeah.
Yeah. So I'm just also going to say, with the 13th path, after you go through 10 years of like, because it was a complete death process. You know how you're just like, you try, you start again. I would try and be like, look, I had created a successful career. I can
Yeah.
do it.
Yeah.
But you know how the world is just like, yeah. But then it got to a point where it was just like, and so when I'm saying, also talking about pitching this movie, it was a time when I had to actually move back to my parents' place.
Yeah.
Like life had gotten back to that way. And when I moved back and I open a wardrobe and I see this dress that I had done in 2012, the project, because it had haunted me. And even I couldn't touch it. And I didn't know that it had actually been brought and stored in my parents' house.
Right.
And me here who had to move back, and I'm just like, and I remember it's even on my Instagram because I just said, oh my gosh, I'd forgotten about it, because I had also written a script about it, because part of me was just like, no, I need to lay this to rest. This thing has been haunting me for too long. And it came, and at that time I was doing the film thing, was meant to pitch. And I looked at it and I was just like, huh. Then I was part of a VR filmmaking masterclass. And they said, if you have a story, write something. And I said, I'm going to pitch a story about this dress going back to somebody who wore it 10 years ago.
Wow.
And then just like let it rest. My pitch won.
Wow, look at that.
Then we did the movie. Then after we did the movie, I thought, and I called it Utawala.
Yeah.
Then I was just like, something might happen. Then guess what happens? Like, you see how things start coming back. A week
Yeah.
later, I see, Fujifilm are coming out with the GFX challenge. It's the first challenge.
Yeah.
On my vision board, I had that camera because it's like a camera that costs over a car. It's a medium format, like digital camera. They were like, if you have a project idea, let us know. And you can even use these cameras and do your project. And I said, I can try again.
Yeah.
Because sometimes when you go through so much in life, trying, even your imagination dies.
Correct.
And I just said, I'm going to try it.
Yeah.
Okay,
And you
I
killed
applied.
it. You killed it.
No, that time I didn't know, but remember, I'm talking about the movie going on,
Yeah.
Inheritance was going
Yeah,
on.
yeah.
Do you know all those projects came through at the same time?
Mm-hmm.
Boom, boom, boom. And I was just like,
Sawa.
okay.
Hold it right there. That is KHALIYESA.
KHALIYESA.
Okay, sawa.
Without the K.
KHALIYESA. Yeah, I like that. Minishi, she's a photographer and filmmaker. We're talking about her amazing project, sorry. And she's got an event on the 21st.
I like how you call it an event. It's an experience.
It's an exhibition. It's an experience.
It's
I
an
like that.
experience.
So you'll talk about that when we come back in just a bit. Right now, Thriller, Michael Jackson. It's 2 minutes after 8. You like that one? It's a good one. Did you watch the movie Michael?
Yeah. No, not yet.
Okay, you should. It's good stuff. All right, so we are coming back in just a bit. Twendekazi.
94.4 Spice FM, Nairobi.